You keep falling in love, but with the version of yourself that doesn't exist yet. Not the person you are when you wake up late and scroll instead of starting. Not the one who avoids uncomfortable work. Not the one who knows exactly what to do but still somehow doesn't move. You fall in love with the idea of yourself. The disciplined version, the confident version, the successful version, the version that finally figures it out. And potential is beautiful. Potential is exciting. Potential feels safe because potential asks for nothing. It lives in imagination. It lives in plans. It lives in one day. You can admire it without proving anything. And that's why people get attached to it. There is something comforting about believing who you could be. You know, the way you could be extraordinary without having to face the ordinary steps that actually makes it real. It lets you feel special without being consistent. It lets you feel capable without being uncomfortable. It lets you feel like you're on the way, even when you haven't even started. Romanticizing your potential is one of the most socially accepted forms of avoidance. Nobody questions it, nobody will interrupt it. It even sounds admirable. So you talk about the things you will do. You imagine the life that you will build. You picture the discipline that you will have. And for a moment, it all feels real. Your brain cannot fully distinguish between imagined progress and real progress. So every time you visualize, you talk, you plan, you research, restart and reorganize, you get a small emotional reward, a quiet sense of movement, a subtle relief. But your life doesn't change from it, does it? Potential becomes the place you visit instead of the direction you walk. You start identifying as someone who is about to start, about to be consistent, about to change and about to become. Your identity stays in the future because the future cannot contradict you. But you know what can? Reality can. Reality is where you are average. Reality is where you repeat your patterns. Reality is where you see how much work things actually take. Reality is where motivation disappears. And so you return to potential because it is kinder to you than reality. Potential doesn't show you your gaps. It does not expose your habits. Potential does not require repetition. So potential lets you be impressive in theory. But there is a quiet grief that grows when you live there for too long. You begin to feel the distance between who you could be and how you are living. It is not dramatic, it is not loud. It is just a persistent background discomfort, a low level of awareness that you are capable of more. And this is the tension that people carry with themselves for years. It is not failure, it is not their lack of talent, it is the distance. The distance created by hesitation, the distance created by fear disguised as preparation, the distance created by waiting to feel ready. You know, readiness is one of the most convincing illusions. It feels responsible, it feels smart, it feels like timing. But most readiness is just emotional permission that you are waiting to receive from yourself. Permission that only appears after you begin. Action creates clarity, not the other way around. Potential tells you that clarity must come first, but reality will teach you that clarity is the result. There is a moment when you realize something uncomfortable, that your potential does not deserve your admiration. What it truly deserves is your execution. This is where the romance breaks, because execution is repetitive. Execution is boring. Execution is invisible. No one will celebrate your early phase. No one applauds consistency when it is small. And no one sees the identity shift while it is still happening. Potential is cinematic. Execution is quiet. Potential is like a highlight reel, and execution are just ordinary days repeated long enough to become a different life. You don't become your potential in one dramatic decision. You become it in hundreds of small decisions that feel insignificant when they happen. decisions that do not feel like transformation, decisions that often feel inconvenient. And this is why people keep choosing potential. It protects them from the identity crisis that execution is going to put them through. Because once you start, you lose the fantasy version of yourself. You will see your resistance, you will see your inconsistency, you will see your excuses in real time. And that can often be humbling. But it is also the first honest place where change is going to begin. Romanticizing your potential allows you to stay the person who you could be, but doing the work forces you to become the person who does, and those identities feel very different internally. Responsibility means showing up when the emotion is gone. Responsibility means repeating actions without immediate reward. Responsibility means accepting that growth is less dramatic than you imagined. The person who could still have endless options is the one with potential. And the person who has responsibility is execution. You stop waiting for a new version of yourself to appear. You realize that the new version is built, it is not discovered. And most people are not stuck because they lack potential. They are stuck because they are emotionally attached to it. Potential keeps hope alive without risk. Execution will risk proving that growth takes longer. Execution risks confronting your limits. Execution risks the patience. And patience is rarely romantic. We prefer breakthroughs. We prefer reinvention. We prefer moments that feel like turning points. But most lives change through accumulation, not turning points. Small proof repeated daily. Small discipline repeated. And small promises kept. The identity shift is a subtle art. You do something you said you would do. Nothing dramatic happens. No sudden confidence. No immediate transformation. Just a quiet piece of evidence that you can trust yourself. This is the part potential cannot give you. Potential gives inspiration. Execution gives self-respect. And self-respect is something that changes behavior faster than motivation ever will. When you trust yourself, you negotiate less with resistance. You stop needing emotional excitement to begin. You stop narrating your future and you start participating in your present. The fantasy becomes less interesting than reality. And you still have dreams, but they lose their performative quality. They become directions instead of identities. Something you are walking towards, not something you use to describe yourself. And this is when potential becomes useful again. Not just as something you admire, but something you work with. There is a difference between believing you have potential and living as if your potential is inevitable. First one will create pressure and the other creates responsibility. Your potential is not fragile. It does not disappear because you start imperfectly. It disappears when you protect it so much that you never expose it to reality. Nothing kills potential faster than admiration without action. You don't need to stop dreaming. You need to stop mistaking it for dreaming for movement. You need to stop mistaking preparation for progress. You need to stop mistaking identity language for identity evidence. Evidence is simple. You did it or you did not do it. That simplicity can feel harsh, but it also feels freeing because it removes the emotional complexity that keeps you stuck in analysis. You don't need a new system. You don't need a perfect plan, and you don't need to feel every time different. You need repetition. Repetition is where potential becomes a skill. Repetition is where confidence becomes natural. Repetition is where identity shifts without announcement. There will always be a version of you that exists only in imagination, and that is not a problem. Imagination is a direction. The problem begins when imagination replaces participation. You are not behind because you lack potential. You feel behind because you keep visiting it instead of building it. The life you admire is rarely created by people who believe in their potential more. It is created by people who interact with reality more, who allowed themselves to be average long enough to become excellent, who stopped protecting the idea of themselves and started risking the process. And at some point, the question changes. Not what I could become, but what I am willing to repeat on a daily basis to become that person. And this question is often less exciting, but it is also the one and only that will change your life. So stop romanticizing your potential and respect it enough to use it.